Hey there, it's me again at Media Science. Today we're going to talk about fragging corals. This is your ultimate beginner's guide to propagation. Now, this is something that can seem pretty daunting at first because the idea of taking a knife or pruners or something like that to a live coral, it seems almost counterintuitive, right? You want to be careful with them and not hurt them. But the truth is, if you do it properly, fragging is actually one of the best ways to propagate corals, and it's very simple. So let's go ahead and dive into it. One of my favorite ways to propagate corals is through fragging. It's relatively quick, it's easy, and it has a really high success rate. First things first, though, we need to make sure that we have healthy corals to work with. We want to start off on the right foot here. Now, when you're buying corals, look for ones that are in good shape, ones that are full, vibrant, and colored. If you buy a coral that's already stressed out or unhealthy, it's going to be much more difficult to get it to propagate and thrive versus starting with one that's already nice and healthy. And don't worry too much about the species of coral that you get. Many of them are very easy to propagate regardless of what they are. Zoanthids, mushrooms, polyps, these are all extremely easy to propagate. Others like acros and other LPS corals can be a little bit more finicky but are still definitely doable. I'm going to walk you through how to propagate zoanthids today, but know that most of the principles that I'll talk about apply to nearly every species out there. The next thing that we need to keep in mind before we even get started is proper sanitation. If you're working with corals that have diseases on them or pests, you're going to spread those around if you're trying to propagate them. So take a look at them under a scope if you can, or at least with your eyes, and try to make sure that everything looks clean and healthy. The last thing we want is to get those diseases and pests spreading around the tank. If you see anything, dip the corals in something like Coral RX or another type of treatment before you get started. Next, it's time to grab some tools. And I think having the right tools for the job makes a huge difference. Now, in the past, I've used different types of knives and pruners, but I found that this little kit from Two Little Fishies makes things super easy. It's got everything you need to get the job done. First up, you have this nice little tray to hold your coral in while you're working on it. It's got a little divot in it so your coral doesn't fall out. It's got a little area where you can put your pruners, a little clamp right here. And then you also have a nice little area where you can put your knife. It just makes everything so much easier and keeps your tools separate while you're working with them. These tools themselves, the clamp and the pruners, are made of stainless steel. They're very easy to use, very easy to clean and sanitize. The clamp works well for holding back the tissue of the coral so you can get a better look at the skeleton and what you're doing. And then the pruners. They're very sharp, very smooth. They have a little notch on the side so you can cut nice flush cuts on the coral. Then there's the knife, which is great for making clean cuts or getting into areas that are hard to reach with the pruners. It's also great for scraping polyps off the rock. All of the tools come with protective covers to help keep everything safe and sanitized, and they also come with a little tool sharpener. So if you ever do need to sharpen any of the tools, you can do that as well. Okay, now that we have our tools and our coral ready to go, it's time to get started. Now, with some corals like mushrooms and zoanthids, the way I like to propagate them is by cutting heads off of the colony and just sticking them down into the sand or rubble in a frag plug, something like that. For other corals like polyps, it's a little bit different. We're going to be using the poly as a template to make a new poly. Now, when you're looking at the poly, you want to find a head that's fully extended. That way, you can get a better idea of where the mouth is, where the oral disc is, and also get a better look at the foot. The foot is going to be the part that attaches the coral to whatever substrate it's on. This is why you want to get a head that's fully extended. That way, you can see all of these different features and make sure that you're taking a large enough piece to have all of the features that it needs to survive. So to get started, I like to take the pruners and disinfect them. Now, the pruners that come with the kit have a little notch on the side, and what that does is it allows you to make a flush cut. So you're cutting the coral perfectly straight. What you're doing is you're taking the polyp and you're cutting it about halfway up the polyp, and then you're pivoting it open, and you're cutting that entire section off. Make sure that you cut it close to the oral disc and far enough away from the base that you have plenty of polyps to work with, but not so far away that you take off too much of the foot. With certain corals, you can kind of eyeball it. Zoanthids are one of those corals that you can kind of just eyeball it, and you'll get a good idea of whether or not you've taken off too much or not enough just by looking at it. With others like polyps, you might want to get a little bit more precise. A good rule of thumb is you want to take a fragment that has at least 10 to 12 polyps on it. You also want to make sure that the foot is intact, so the foot is going to be the bottom part of the coral. It's going to be brownish in color. It's going to be chalky and kind of bumpy and uneven. Versus the oral disc, which is going to be the top part, it's going to be white and it's going to be smooth. So you want to make sure that you have a little bit of that foot down here, but primarily you want to have a lot of polyps on there. Ideally, you want to have the polyps fully extended. That way you can see what direction they're facing and make sure that they're all facing towards the light source. You don't want to have a bunch of polyps facing down because that's not going to look good. You want to have them all facing up so that they're all lit up and thriving. And that's basically it. As long as you have the foot and the polyps, you should be good to go. Now, once you've got your coral prepped and ready to go, it's time to put it in a frag plug or a tray or whatever you want to put it in. If you're using a frag plug, you can either glue it on there or you can press it in there. Sometimes it's difficult to get the coral to stick to the plug, so I actually prefer to use super glue. Just put a little dab on the end of the coral and press it in there, and that usually does the trick. You can also take egg crate and cut it into smaller pieces and just lay the coral on there. Now, with something like a mushroom, you're going to do something a little bit different. You're going to take the mushroom and you're going to take the base off of it. You're going to flip it upside down and you're going to take a sharp object like the tip of the pruners and you're going to poke a hole through the middle of the mushroom. Once you do that, you can set it down in a frag plug or down in the sand, and that should be all you need to do. Now, from here, you're going to want to move your corals to a quarantine tank. There's a couple of reasons for this. 1. You want to make sure that they don't get pests or diseases introduced to them in your display tank. And secondly, you want to make sure that you don't accidentally introduce pests or diseases from your quarantine corals to your display corals. But anyway, setting them up in a quarantine tank is easy. You don't need anything special. Just put them in a container, add some water, make sure they're aerated, and you're good to go. Just make sure you're changing the water periodically, adding some sort of protein skimming or filtration, whatever you need to do to make sure that it stays clean and clear. And then give them plenty of light. From here, you're just going to wait. Depending on the coral, it can take anywhere from a few days to a week or two to start to see signs of growth. It's important during this time to monitor the water parameters and make sure that everything stays stable and healthy. Once you start seeing growth, though, that's when you'll know that you've been successful. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my channel. We do a lot of great content over there, including coral propagation. We've got videos on how to grow a coral garden and how to care for them. And we've also got tons of videos on how to propagate different types of corals, including mushy gardens and growing them from eggs. So if you're interested in that stuff, make sure to check out my channel. Like this video, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Fragging corals might sound intimidating, but with the right approach, it's a simple and effective way to propagate healthy coral colonies. Start by selecting vibrant, disease-free corals, as healthy specimens will adapt better after fragging. Gather your sanitized tools, ensuring everything is clean to prevent disease spread. Carefully cut or separate polyps, preserving the foot and several heads. Attach the fragment to a plug with a dab of superglue, quarantine the frag, and provide stable water conditions for optimal recovery and growth.